Hello, my name is Jessalyn Chagina, and this is for my Health Humanities class. Today, I will be interviewing my mom, Jennifer Chagina, on the topic of religion and health. Do you know what the topic of religion and health means?
Yes. Well, being Catholic, religion plays a big part when it comes to health, especially making decisions based on your religion when it comes to your health.
Lead researchers recommend that paying attention to the way that a person's religion functions in their lives can improve the care that a provider gives to a patient. There's been research that religion and spirituality contribute to better health outcomes. And such as like religion and blood pressure, where there was a study in California where non-religious individuals that were Chinese, Filipino, and Japanese, they had problems with hypertension as opposed to ones that were like Buddhist or were religious in California. Like they were more susceptible to having to dying from hypertension. If so, how do you think your religiousness is measured?
Basically, I went to Catholic school all my life. Take that back. Up until high school, I did not go to Catholic school, but I did attend from kindergarten through eighth grade. Even after I attended a public high school, I still continued to go to church every Sunday. My grandmother was a very religious person. So during the month of October, we would say the rosary. Even if we're just there every day, she would take the time to make sure that we said the rosary or we said grace before we ate. When we got in the car, we always had to pray, make the sign of the cross. Even now, I try to implement that with you guys. Perfect example, Jocelyn, you're away at college and we've instilled how important it is to attend church.
Right.
And you attend church while being out, in East Bay. You played club volleyball where we traveled a lot. And even when we traveled, we made an effort to go to mass on Sundays. We're on vacation, even camping, and we try to make an effort to attend mass.
So, do you think that religion plays a role in someone's health? And if so, how?
Yes. I think the biggest topic being a Catholic is abortion. It's a very touchy subject. As a Catholic, you are supposed to be pro-life and you are not even supposed to think about abortion at all. Yes, I am a religious person. I attend Mass every Sunday. I'm also a Eucharistic minister and a lector and commentator. That means, I read in church and I administer communion to the community and to the sick. But when it comes to abortion, I have to be pro-choice. And that's because, God forbid, if any of my daughters were raped or molested and from that crime, they got pregnant from it. It would be very hard to keep that baby. And yes, I understand the baby has no fault, but how are you supposed to, especially with my daughters, knowing that their child is an everyday reminder of them being violated? Or you have an ectopic pregnancy where you have to choose your life or the baby's life, and the baby might not even survive and you might not even survive. So you have to choose, should I abort the baby or take that risk? If you're already a mother and you have an ectopic pregnancy, if you try to carry to term, what if you die in the process? How's that fair to your other children and to your husband, who's going to have to raise, your other children? Again, I know it's not the baby's fault, but then you would have to choose. A lot of people, being a Catholic, would say you have to choose life.
Yeah.
Well, I am choosing life. I'm choosing my life so I can take care of my children. Catholics don't believe in that.
Yeah.
It's just pro-life all the way. Life all the way.
I mean, in the topic of abortion, would you say that it's important for like your medical provider to keep in mind like what the patient's religious beliefs are? Because say if like a patient is Catholic and they're really not sure what to do, but in their best case scenario, the best thing is to have an abortion. Do you think that the provider should be like come from a medical standpoint or back them up in the religious standpoint?
As a provider, because I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I think because it's your profession and you have to take your personal feelings out of your profession because this is your job. And sometimes, yes, you care, but you can't care. Even if I was a doctor and I was a strong Catholic and I believed in not abortion, but I knew that it was going to harm my patient, I would have to do what's medically necessary to advise my patient.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of people in the medical community, they think it's inappropriate to ask patients about like their beliefs and their faith, but a lot of patients actually do want them to ask those questions in case like it comes to that circumstance and you don't know what to do.
Right. Because then you would get the medical aspect of it. And what if your doctor happens to be Catholic?
Yeah.
And the doctor can, of course, advise you on what is best medically because that's his profession and he or she, and that's what they're supposed to do. But at the same time, they're Catholic and they understand. So they can show both sides. Can they make that decision for you? No. But at least they can advise on both being a Catholic and being a doctor.
Yeah. And there are like three main things that come from it, which is like religious involvement. So say if you know how we have certain traditions in the Catholic faith and everything. So that actually shows that there's a correlation to that and having lower hypertension, lower rates of substance abuse, lower rates of like mortality. And then you have religious motivation where there could be a positive correlation with like sociability, sense of well-being, and tolerance. Or you can have religious coping, which is like negative or positive coping strategies, and in some instances it helps patients like adjust to a terrible diagnosis. So have you ever prayed to God when you were sick or when you found out about someone else's diagnosis?
Oh yes, plenty of times. Personal experiences that I've had with myself. You know, I mean, I caught COVID in 2020 when it first started, and because it was so very new, even the medical professionals, they didn't even know how to advise us because it was so new. And I prayed every day, and my motivation to get better was not only my faith, but because of you guys, because of my kids. I knew that I had to get through this, and through prayer is what gave me the strength to go through that. My mom, she passed away of cancer. And going through that with her, you know, just sitting there watching her go through her chemo, I would sit there and pray. And I mean, I knew eventually, you know, she's going to pass, but it's my faith that kept me stronger to cope with this every day.
There's often times that there is this fear that someone is being like punished or abandoned by God because they have some medical problems. And, you know, negative thoughts can come up, which like, and it can be associated with religion and it can lead to like depression and lower quality of life. So have you ever blamed God or were angry with God due to your own medical diagnosis or finding about someone else's medical diagnosis? Were you ever like, did you ever think that your relationship with God became kind of negative in a way because maybe you were blaming him or, you know, your faith wasn't as strong as the time because of that?
Me personally, with my personal experiences, no. But with others, I mean, I have a cousin who would be an excellent mother, her and her husband. And she's a nurse. And she takes care of herself. And she's trying very hard to have a baby. And she deserves to be a mother. And she can't. And you wonder, why? What did she do to be punished? And I say that not as a punishment, but because here she is, who would be an excellent mother. She's a nurse, her husband's a doctor, they're financially stable. They could take care of this child. But then you have somebody on the outside who is not married, doesn't have a job, and they just get pregnant over and over and over. And they take drugs while they're pregnant. Their kids end up in the foster care system, and then they have more kids and more kids. You know, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
How can you not bless anybody who could be a doctor, but then again, you let somebody else become a parent? And I hate to say this, but they don't deserve to be parents. But on the other hand, this person does. So, yeah, sometimes you say, why? And you ask God, why are you punishing them? And then you have to rely on your faith again and say, things happen for a reason. This is going on for a reason. Why? I don't know. But you have to have faith.
So now, do you feel mentally or physically better when you pray as you or a loved one is sick?
Yes. I do feel better physically and mentally because you worry so much that it's mentally draining and it's exhausting. Your body gets tired, you can't sleep, and eventually it catches up with you. But through prayer, you can find peace in that moment to where you can go to sleep and you don't worry as much because you have to just trust God and just give it all to Him. It's hard, because I've experienced that myself. It's very hard. It's easier said than done, but I do feel better. I know that if I don't go to church, it just feels like my week is just crappy.
Yeah.
And then when I do go to church, I know that I'm going to have a good week. And yeah, maybe I'll have a bad week, but I don't feel as bad. And every time I don't go, it's like, man, I didn't go to church and I'm having such a bad week. And that's why.
Yeah.
And when I go to church, I feel good.
So there's a study by Tanya Lerman, who is an anthropologist, and she explored the intersectionality of religion and science. And her research showed that people of faith just feel better and they feel healthier. And in social epidemiology, they showed that a relationship with God is good for your body in terms of immune functions or feelings of loneliness. And talking to God represents like a social relationship, like as if you were talking to a friend.
Right.
And that contributes to high brain function and all of that. And 80% of research shows that spirituality and religiousness that focuses on mental health, it actually helps them. So like words associated with religious beliefs like connectedness, hope, optimism, and trust, they all boost someone's mental health. So now moving on to mental health, I feel like there could be both negative and positive aspects of prayer with mental health. So in terms of that, do you believe that prayer is negative or positive if someone is dealing with like a mental illness or like having mental health issues?
Well, that's hard because a person with mental health obviously is not stable mentally.
Yeah.
So because they have so many issues going on, it's hard for them to find that balance. And I think that's why you have others pray for that person, because that person, they basically are just going through so much stuff that they're lost and they can't find that peace and they can't find anything. So you have to pray for them. And maybe eventually, if you talk to them through counseling, and even if they see a priest and they go and, pray or go to church and somebody there to help them and guide them, it'll help. But for them to just make that decision right off the bat, it's hard because they're going through something already. They're mentally not there. They're not of mind, sound, and body to do that.
Yeah.
So I prayed and I asked God to keep me strong and to have faith. And no matter what the outcome will be, whether it's positive or negative, I know that I can always turn to my faith. And not only for myself, but for my family, for my children, because that's what we instilled with you guys. I knew that you would be with me in prayer.
So in general, you think that just your religion and prayer, it positively affects health?
Yes, it does. It does. Maybe not at first, because at first a normal person would blame God and say, why?
Yeah.
Why am I diagnosed with cancer? I have kids. I have to do this. Why are you doing this to me? But then eventually, you come to terms and then you have nowhere else but to turn to God. Because if you're religious, if you don't have that peace and if you don't find God, we believe you're not going to go to heaven. I want to go to heaven.
Yeah.